The massive crystal dome of the spiral assembly glowed with soft blue light as thousands of alien delegates filled their seats. The air hummed with the sound of translation devices working overtime, turning clicks, whistles, and growls into understandable speech. Today felt different from other council meetings. An uncomfortable tension filled the room like electricity before a storm. Archon Veltar raised his 4 crystalline arms for silence. His species, the Kethmori, had led the Galactic Confederation for over 2,000 years. They were known for their wisdom and careful thinking. But today, even Veltar seemed worried. Fellow beings, his voice echoed through the chamber. We gather to discuss the most dangerous situation our civilization has ever faced. The Vorthic Empire wishes to expand into the restricted zones of Sector 7745. Murmurs of fear rippled through the assembly. Every species in the galaxy knew about Sector 7745. It was where the humans lived. And everyone knew the one unwritten rule that had kept the galaxy peaceful for 300 years. Never disturb the humans. Ambassador Zelix from the Tentacled Coalition stood up. His purple skin turned darker with stress. Honored Archon, surely you cannot allow this madness. We all remember what happened to the Zealothi. Veltar's crystalline face showed no emotion, but his voice carried the weight of history. Let me remind our younger members why we fear a species that barely had space travel when we first found them. The great viewing screen activated, showing historical records from 3 centuries ago. Earth appeared as a small blue dot in a quiet corner of the galaxy. The early reports called humans primitive but curious, with concerning levels of aggression toward their own kind. First contact went well, Veltar continued. Humans seemed eager to trade and learn. They were polite, grateful for our technology, and appeared to understand their place as a minor species in our great civilization. The screen showed images of early human colonies, small and struggling compared to the mighty cities of older alien races. Human ships looked simple next to the elegant vessels of species who had traveled the stars for millennia. Then came the trade dispute with the Zealothi Commerce Guild, a simple matter of cargo manifests and payment schedules. 3 human merchants died when Zealothi enforcers became impatient. The room grew silent. Everyone knew what came next, but hearing it again still sent chills through even the bravest species. The human response was immediate. Within 1 standard day, every Zealothi trade route reported problems. Ships developed mysterious engine failures in dangerous areas of space. Communication networks crashed at critical moments. Cargo holds were found empty despite being sealed and guarded. Banking systems experienced errors that always favored human accounts. Ambassador Thrick from the Mechanical Collective made a grinding sound that meant discomfort. The Zealothi were the most powerful traders in the galaxy. They controlled commerce across 200 systems. Veltar emphasized. Within 2 standard cycles, the Zealothi Commerce Guild no longer existed. Not destroyed by weapons or warfare, but simply dissolved. Every asset transferred to human control through methods our best economists still cannot understand. Every trade agreement rewritten in humanity's favor. Every competitor eliminated with surgical precision. The viewing screen showed the aftermath. Former Zealothi trade stations operated by humans. Zealothi citizens working as employees in companies they had once owned. The transformation was complete and terrifying in its efficiency. But the most disturbing aspect, Veltar's voice dropped to almost a whisper, was the message they sent afterward. A new image appeared. A simple text transmission sent to every government in known space. It read, "The Zealothi Commerce Guild leadership wishes to apologize for their unfortunate behavior toward our citizens. They have voluntarily dissolved their organization and transferred their assets to humanity as compensation. We hope this resolves the matter peacefully." They made the Zoethi thank them for being conquered. Ambassador Zelix whispered in horror. Veltar nodded slowly. That was when we understood. Humans do not simply fight wars. They delete their enemies from existence while making it appear voluntary. They weaponize economics, psychology, and social structures in ways we had never imagined. The room erupted in nervous chatter. Delegates who had not lived through the original incident struggled to understand how such a thing was possible. The analysis was clear. Veltar continued when silence returned. Humans possess a form of intelligence optimized for conflict resolution through total victory. They study their opponents until they understand them completely, then engineer circumstances where defeat appears preferable to continued resistance. An elderly delegate from the Hive Worlds clicked her mandibles in thought. This is why we established Protocol 7, complete isolation. No contact, no trade, no acknowledgement of human existence. Correct. We allowed them their small corner of space and focused on the rest of the galaxy. Our civilization has prospered for 3 centuries under this arrangement. But now a new problem had emerged. The Vorthic Empire, a young and aggressive species, had petitioned for colonization rights in several systems bordering human space. They claimed the systems were uninhabited according to long-range scans. The Vorthics believe our fears are superstition, Veltar explained. They have never encountered humans directly. Their military advisors claim that 300 years of technological advancement give them overwhelming advantages over any primitive human forces. Ambassador. Threek's mechanical voice carried static from stress. Have they not seen the records? Do they not understand what they are proposing? Young species often believe they are exceptions to the rules that bind others, Veltar replied sadly. The Vorthak military has conquered 7 sectors through superior firepower and tactics. They view our warnings as the fears of weaklings. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Elder species who remembered the Zelathi incident argued passionately against disturbing humanity. Younger civilizations, led by the Vorthics, dismissed these concerns as outdated fears of a bygone era. When the vote finally came, the result sent shockwaves through the assembly. By a narrow margin, the Vorthic petition was approved. They would be allowed to attempt colonization of the disputed systems. As delegates filed out in worried silence, Veltar remained in his seat, staring at the star charts showing human space. 300 years of peace were about to end. The galaxy was about to remember why some rules existed for very good reasons. In his private chambers later, Veltar activated a secure communication channel that had not been used in centuries. If the humans were about to be disturbed, perhaps it was only fair to warn them that the rest of the galaxy was coming to visit. The transmission disappeared into the void, carrying a simple message toward human space. They have forgotten why we fear you. Soon, they will remember. Captain Zexhai of the Vorthic Imperial Fleet stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Burning Talon, watching the Kepler 442 system grow larger on the main screen. Behind him stretched the largest colonization fleet in Vorthic history. 500 ships carrying everything needed to establish mining colonies on 3 planets, rich in rare metals. The Vorthics were proud warriors who had built their empire through strength and superior technology. Their ships used quantum phase drives that could cross vast distances in days rather than months. Their weapons could crack planets in half. Their armor could withstand the heat of dying stars. Zexhai felt confident as he surveyed his fleet. Whatever primitive defenses the humans might have built in the last 3 centuries could not possibly challenge Vorthic military might. The warnings from the Galactic Council seemed like the fears of weak species who had never faced real combat. Sir, his sensor operator announced. Initial scans show the system is empty, just as predicted. No ships, no orbital platforms, no signs of habitation. HFY nodded with satisfaction. The elderly species in the council had been wrong. Perhaps humans had simply died out or moved elsewhere. Either way, the valuable mining worlds would soon belong to the Empire. But as the fleet moved deeper into the system, strange readings began to appear on their instruments. Energy signatures that should not exist started showing up on passive scans. The empty space around them suddenly felt much less empty. "Captain," the sensor operator's voice carried a note of confusion. "I am detecting massive structures throughout the system. But they were not there moments ago." The main screen changed to tactical display, and HFY felt his confidence waver. Hundreds of objects had appeared from nowhere, surrounding his fleet in a perfect sphere of obviously artificial constructs. Space stations, defensive platforms, and ships of unknown design filled what had appeared to be empty void. "How is this possible?" HFY demanded. "Our sensors are the most advanced in known space. Nothing can hide from Vorthok technology." Before anyone could answer, the main communications array activated on its own. HFY had not authorized any incoming transmissions, but somehow a signal was coming through anyway. The screen shifted to show a human female in a simple blue uniform, sitting in what appeared to be the command center of a very large ship. "Good morning," the human said in perfectly pronounced Vorthok language. "I am Captain Sarah Chun of the United Nations colonial ship Mylmir. You have entered United Nations colonial space. Please state your intentions." HFY stared at the screen. No transmission method should be able to penetrate his ship's shields without his permission. The technology required was centuries beyond what humans should possess. "I am Captain HFY of the Vorthok Imperial Fleet," he replied, trying to maintain his authority. "We claimed this system for the Vorthok Empire under galactic colonization laws. Withdraw your vessels immediately." Captain Chun smiled, and somehow that expression was more unsettling than any threat. "I see. Well, before we discuss territorial claims, would you like to take a tour? It might help you understand the situation better." Before HFY could refuse, his navigation displays activated without his commands. Data flowed across the screens, showing detailed maps of the entire system. What he saw made his blood run cold. The system was not empty. It was full of human installations built with technology that should not exist. Industrial complexes the size of moons floated in the void, processing raw materials on a scale that dwarfed anything in known space. Defensive platforms bristled with weapons that bent light around them in impossible ways. "This is the Kepler 442 system." Chun's voice continued as the tour proceeded. "One of our smaller industrial centers. We have been developing it for about 200 years now." The display shifted to show human colonies on planets that scans had reported as uninhabited. Cities stretched across entire continents, their populations numbering in the billions. Advanced transportation networks moved goods and people at speeds that violated known laws of physics. "How many systems do you control?" HFY asked, though he feared the answer. "At last count, approximately 11,347 systems across this galaxy, plus our expanding colonies in the Andromeda Galaxy," Chun replied casually. "We have been quite busy during our isolation period." HFY felt the deck shift under his feet. 11,000 systems. The entire Vorthok Empire controlled only 200 systems, and they were considered a major power. The humans had built an empire 50 times larger than his own, and no one in the galaxy knew about it. But how? He whispered. "The council said you were primitive. Your technology was centuries behind ours." Chun's expression became thoughtful. "We were behind, that is true. But we learned something important from our early encounters with galactic civilization. Being underestimated is the greatest advantage one can possess." The tactical display updated again, showing human fleet movements throughout local space. Thousands of ships moved in perfect coordination, their designs unlike anything in existing databases. They seemed to phase in and out of normal space, traveling by methods that made no sense. We studied every species in the galaxy during our isolation, Chun continued. We learned your languages, your technologies, your military tactics, your economic systems, your social structures, even your individual psychology patterns. We know more about you than you know about yourselves. HFY realized with growing horror that this human captain was not boasting. She was stating facts with the same tone one might use to discuss the weather. What do you want from us? He asked. Chun leaned forward slightly. Nothing at all. We want to be left alone, just as we have been for 3 centuries. Unfortunately, you have chosen to enter our space with a military fleet and make territorial demands. This presents us with a problem. We did not know, HFY said quickly. If we had realized this space was occupied, we would never have come here. I believe you, Chun replied. But you are here now, and you represent a government that has made formal claims to our territory. This requires a response. The displays around HFY suddenly showed detailed information about the Vorthok Empire that should have been impossible to obtain. Troop movements, fleet positions, economic data, even personal files on military commanders appeared on his own screens. You have 2 choices, Chun said gently. You can return to your government and explain that this space is already occupied by a civilization that prefers peaceful coexistence. Or you can attempt to enforce your territorial claims through military action. HFY looked at the data streaming across his displays. Human intelligence networks had penetrated every aspect of Vorthok society. They knew everything about his people, while his own forces had not even detected human presence until moments ago. If we choose to fight? He asked, though he already knew the answer was not good. Chun's smile never wavered. Then you will discover why the Galactic Council established Protocol 7. The universe is a very large place, Captain HFY. Large enough for many different kinds of civilizations. But it is not large enough for civilizations that cannot coexist peacefully. The transmission ended, leaving HFY staring at blank screens. Around him, his bridge crew waited for orders that he was not sure how to give. The humans had not threatened him directly, but the implications were clear. His fleet was surrounded, outgunned, and completely outmaneuvered by an enemy they had not known existed. But the Vorthok Empire did not retreat from challenges. Honor demanded that territorial claims be defended, even against impossible odds. HFY activated his communications array and sent a message to the human fleet. Captain Chun, the Vorthok Empire does not withdraw its claims. We demand immediate surrender of this system, or we will take it by force. The response came immediately, and Chun's voice carried no anger, only sadness. Very well, Captain. You have made your choice. Now, we will make ours. The Vorthok Empire responded to Captain HFY's report with the largest military mobilization in their history. 10,000 warships gathered from across their territory, representing every class of vessel in the Imperial fleet. Admiral Keekter, the Empire's greatest military mind, took personal command of the operation. The Admiral studied intelligence reports in his command chamber aboard the flagship Crimson Victory. 300 years of human development had clearly produced unexpected results, but the Empire had advantages that could not be ignored. Their quantum phase weapons could destroy entire fleets in minutes. Their void shields could withstand the explosion of stars. Their tactical computers had won battles against 7 different species. They may have superior numbers, Keekter told his staff, but we have superior firepower. A single Vorthok dreadnought can destroy 50 enemy vessels. They cannot have built enough ships to overcome that advantage. The fleet jumped into hyperspace, heading for the edge of human territory. The plan was simple and effective. Advance in overwhelming force, destroy any resistance, and occupy key systems before the humans could organize a proper defense. Speed and shock would win the day. But when the Vorthok Armada dropped out of hyperspace at their first target system, they found it completely empty. No human ships, no defense platforms, no signs of habitation. Only empty space and the distant glow of an uninhabited star. "Sir," the sensor officer reported, "all scans confirm the system is unoccupied. No energy signatures, no artificial structures, nothing." Admiral Keekter frowned. Intelligence had indicated this was a major human industrial center. Either their information was wrong, or the humans had evacuated their entire population in the time it took the Vorthok fleet to arrive. "Advance to the next system," he ordered. They cannot evacuate everything. But the next system was also empty. And the one after that. For 3 days, the Vorthok Armada advanced through supposedly human space without encountering any resistance. It was as if the entire human civilization had simply vanished. Then the problems began. It started small. Navigation computers began reporting minor errors in course calculations. Communication systems experienced brief delays in message transmission. Supply inventory showed small discrepancies in stored materials. Nothing serious, but enough to cause concern among the fleet's technical staff. Within a week, the problems had grown worse. Entire ships found themselves separated from the main fleet due to navigation failures that sent them in random directions. Supply vessels discovered their cargo holds empty despite being sealed and guarded. Worst of all, crew members began receiving personal messages on their private communication devices. Admiral Keekter stared at the message that had appeared on his personal tablet that morning. It was written in perfect ancient Vorthok, the ceremonial language used only by the highest military ranks. "Honored Admiral, your tactical approach follows the classical Vorthok doctrine established by General Dekvar during the Chinduri campaign. However, you have modified formation spacing by 12% to account for human weapons capabilities observed during initial contact. This shows admirable adaptability. Unfortunately, your assumptions about human fleet strength are based on incomplete data. We suggest you reconsider your current course of action before circumstances force less pleasant alternatives." The message was signed simply, "A friend." How is this possible? The communication had come through military-grade encryption that should have been impossible to break. More disturbing, the tactical analysis was completely accurate. Keeker had indeed modified his formations based on reports from Captain Zexhai, and the percentage mentioned was exactly correct. Similar messages appeared throughout the fleet. Ship captains received detailed critiques of their command decisions. Engineers found helpful suggestions for improving their systems. Even individual crew members got personal notes, commenting on everything from their duty performance to their homesickness. The messages were always polite, often helpful, and absolutely terrifying in their implications. "They are inside our networks," Chief Engineer Vic Tal reported during an emergency staff meeting. "Somehow, they have complete access to our computer systems, our communications, even our personal files. Every secret we have is known to them." Admiral Keekter felt control slipping away from him. An enemy that could not be found was systematically destroying his fleet's morale and effectiveness without firing a single shot. His ships were being scattered across space by navigation failures that seemed almost deliberate. His supply lines were collapsing due to mysterious cargo disappearances that defied all logical explanation. "Sir," his intelligence officer announced, "we have finally located a human fleet. 300 ships in the Tau Ceti system, apparently waiting for us." Keekter felt relief wash over him. Finally, an enemy he could fight with conventional tactics. Set course immediately. We will end this game of hide and seek. The battle that followed became legend throughout the galaxy, not for its duration but for its brevity. The engagement lasted exactly 17 minutes from first contact to Vorthek. Surrendered. Human ships moved in ways that violated known laws of physics. They appeared and disappeared at will, striking from impossible angles with weapons that seemed to rewrite reality itself. Vorthek vessels that were hit did not explode or break apart. They simply ceased to exist, as if they had been edited out of the universe. Admiral Keekter watched in horror as his escort fleet vanished ship by ship. The human vessels phased in and out of normal space like ghosts, untouchable but deadly. When the Crimson Victory's own shields failed, he expected immediate destruction. Instead, Captain Chun appeared on his main screen again. Her expression sad but determined. Admiral, you have lost 60% of your fleet, and we have not yet deployed our primary weapon systems. Your remaining ships are surrounded and your escape routes are blocked. Will you continue this engagement? Keekter looked around his bridge at displays showing the impossible truth. His mighty armada had been reduced to scattered remnants in less than 20 minutes. The humans had not just defeated him. They had demonstrated capabilities that bordered on omnipotence. I request immediate parley, he said, his voice heavy with defeat. The meeting took place aboard a neutral station that materialized out of nowhere in the space between the two fleets. Admiral Keekter arrived expecting to negotiate surrender terms. But Captain Chen had other plans. Admiral, we need to discuss the future of human-Vorthek relations, she began as they sat across from each other in a simple conference room. Your government has declared war on a civilization it does not understand. This creates problems for both our peoples. Kika stared at the human woman who had just destroyed his fleet with casual efficiency. What do you want from us? Chun activated a holographic display showing the galaxy. We want the same thing we have wanted for 3 centuries, to be left alone to develop our civilization in peace. Unfortunately, your attack has made that impossible. The display zoomed in on Vorthek space, showing detailed maps of their territory, fleet positions, industrial centers, and population centers. The level of detail was staggering and completely impossible to obtain without decades of espionage. We have been studying your people since the day you first achieved spaceflight, Chun continued. We know your history, your culture, your technology, your military capabilities, even your individual psychology profiles. We know everything about you. Why? Keekter asked. Chen's expression became thoughtful. Because we learned something important from our early encounters with galactic civilization. Peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the presence of overwhelming deterrent capability. We have spent 3 centuries making ourselves very expensive to fight. She gestured to the display showing human space, which expanded far beyond anything the Vorthek intelligence services had imagined. We do not want to conquer you, Admiral. We want to ensure that no one will ever again make the mistake of underestimating human resolve. The implications struck Keekter like a physical blow. The humans had been preparing for this exact scenario for centuries. Every aspect of the current conflict had been anticipated, planned for, and countered before it even began. What happens now? He asked quietly. Chun smiled, and for the first time, it reached her eyes. Now you return to your people and explain that the humans are not the primitives your government believed them to be. You tell them that we prefer peace, but we are very good at war. And you recommend that future relations between our peoples be conducted through diplomacy rather than force. As Admiral Keekter prepared to leave, Chun added one final comment. Oh, and Admiral? The next time you decide to invade someone's territory, you might want to make sure you understand who you are fighting. The universe is full of surprises. The news of the Vorthik defeat spread across the galaxy faster than light-speed communications. Within hours, every major civilization had received detailed reports of what had happened in the Tau Ceti system. The details became more frightening with each retelling. The Vorthik Empire's greatest fleet had been destroyed in 17 minutes. Human technology had proven capable of things that should have been impossible. Most terrifying of all, the humans had demonstrated they knew everything about everyone in the galaxy, while remaining completely unknown themselves. In the crystal halls of the Galactic Confederation, panic spread through the assembly like wildfire. Trade networks began shutting down as species withdrew into defensive positions. Alliance structures that had existed for millennia crumbled as member worlds demanded answers about why they had not been told the truth about human capabilities. Ambassador Zelix from the Tentacled Coalition stood before the emergency session, his purple skin almost black with stress. How could we not know? He demanded. How could a civilization build an empire of 11,000 systems without our intelligence services detecting anything? Archon Veltar struggled to maintain order as accusations flew across the chamber. The younger species who had voted to allow the Vorthak expedition now faced the fury of elder races, who had tried to prevent this disaster. The humans have been studying us for 3 centuries, Veltar announced when silence finally returned. Our preliminary analysis suggests they have intelligence networks embedded in every major civilization. They know our military capabilities, our economic structures, our political systems, even our individual psychological profiles. The implications sent shockwaves through the assembly. If the humans knew everything about everyone, then no civilization was truly independent anymore. Every species was potentially under constant observation by an intelligence network they could not detect or counter. What do they want from us? Asked Ambassador Thrick from the Mechanical Collective. According to their communications with Admiral Kichter, they want to be left alone, Veltar replied. But the situation has changed. They can no longer maintain isolation when the galaxy knows of their existence. Reports from frontier worlds made the crisis worse. Several species on the edges of known space had begun sending diplomatic missions toward human territory, seeking protection or alliance. Others were abandoning their colonies entirely, fleeing toward what they hoped would be safer regions of space. The economic impact was immediate and devastating. Interstellar commerce depended on predictable relationships between known powers. The sudden appearance of a civilization that dwarfed all existing empires combined had destroyed the fundamental assumptions that make galactic trade possible. Meanwhile, deep in human space, a very different scene was taking place. The massive orbital habitat called Haven Prime served as the diplomatic center for humanity's interactions with other species. The station was easily the largest artificial structure in known space, capable of housing millions of beings in perfect comfort. Dr. Elena Vasquez, Director of Xenological Relations, walked through corridors filled with representatives from over 200 different species. These were not conquered peoples or reluctant allies, but genuine partners who had chosen to work with humanity over the past 3 centuries. The galaxy is finally learning what we have known for generations, commented Ambassador Krikstal, whose people had been among the first to seek human protection after their homeworld was threatened by aggressive neighbors. Humans do not seek conquest. They seek cooperation. Dr. Vasquez nodded as she reviewed reports from across human space. The revelation of humanity's true capabilities was causing chaos in the galaxy, but it was also creating opportunities. Species that had been oppressed by larger powers were suddenly looking toward humanity for support. The Universal Accords were designed for exactly this situation, she told her assembled staff. We always knew that someday our isolation would end. The question is whether we can manage the transition peacefully. In the military section of Haven Prime, Fleet Admiral James Morrison reviewed tactical assessments with his senior commanders. The confrontation with the Vorthix had been anticipated and planned for decades in advance, but it was only the beginning of humanity's emergence onto the galactic stage. Intelligence reports indicate at least 47 different civilizations are reassessing their military capabilities in light of recent events. Admiral Morrison announced to his staff, "Several aggressive powers are considering preemptive strikes against human territory before we can expand further." Commander Sarah Chun, recently promoted after her handling of the Vorthix situation, studied the tactical displays showing potential threat assessments. Should we consider demonstrating our capabilities to additional targets? Make it clear that the Vorthix defeat was not a unique occurrence? Admiral Morrison shook his head. Unnecessary. Our intelligence networks are already disseminating carefully selected information about human military capabilities. Sometimes the threat of power is more effective than its actual use. The truth was that humanity's military preparations went far beyond what they had revealed to the Vorthix. The ships that had destroyed Admiral Keekter's fleet represented only a tiny fraction of human naval capabilities. Hidden throughout human space were defensive systems that could destroy entire invasion fleets before they crossed the border. But the real strength of human civilization lay not in their weapons, but in their approach to interspecies relations. Dr. Vasquez demonstrated this during a meeting with newly arrived refugees from the Kethmori border regions. "We understand that you are fleeing conflict in your home systems," she told the assembled beings through translation devices. "Humanity offers protection to those who seek it, but we do not require you to give up your independence or your cultural identity." The refugee spokesman, a crystalline being whose light patterns indicated deep concern, asked the question that was on everyone's mind. "What do you want in exchange for this protection?" Dr. Vasquez smiled warmly. "We want you to be the best version of yourselves that you can be. We want you to contribute to the greater community according to your abilities and inclinations. We want you to help us build a civilization where strength protects rather than conquers." It was a message that resonated throughout the galaxy as word spread of humanity's true nature. Yes, they possessed military power that bordered on the incomprehensible, but they used that power to protect rather than dominate, to defend rather than conquer. Back in the Galactic Confederation, the emergency sessions continued as member species tried to determine how to respond to this new reality. Some called for immediate diplomatic contact with humanity. Others demanded military preparation for what they saw as inevitable human expansion. "We must accept the truth," Archon Voltar finally announced after days of debate. "Humanity is now the dominant power in this galaxy. Our choice is not whether to acknowledge this reality, but how we choose to respond to it." The Confederation's decision came in the form of an official diplomatic mission to human space. For the first time in 3 centuries, the galactic government would make formal contact with humanity, not as a superior civilization dealing with primitives, but as equals seeking to establish peaceful relations. As the diplomatic fleet prepared to depart for Haven Prime, intercepted human communications revealed the most surprising truth of all. Humanity had been expecting this moment, and had already prepared detailed proposals for a new form of galactic governance based on voluntary cooperation rather than hierarchical control. The universe was about to discover that humanity's greatest weapon was not their advanced technology or their military power. It was their vision of what galactic civilization could become when built on principles of mutual respect and shared prosperity. The age of human isolation was ending. The age of human leadership was about to begin. 6 months after the Vorthix incident, the galaxy had transformed in ways that no one could have predicted. The massive diplomatic station Haven Prime had become the unofficial center of galactic civilization, hosting representatives from over 300 species in ongoing negotiations that would reshape the future of interstellar relations. The formal signing ceremony for the Terran Accords took place in Haven Prime's Grand Assembly, a chamber large enough to hold delegates from every known species in comfortable surroundings adapted to their specific needs. Atmospheric controls maintained dozens of different breathing mixtures. Gravity fields varied by section to accommodate beings, ranging from gas-floating jellyfish to heavy-world rock creatures. That Dr. Elena Vasquez stood at the central podium, looking out at the largest gathering of alien representatives in galactic history. Behind her, the text of the Terran Accords glowed in thousands of different languages and communication methods. Today marks the beginning of a new era in galactic civilization, she began. Her words translated instantly into every form of communication present. For too long, our relationships have been based on fear, suspicion, and the assumption that different species cannot coexist peacefully. The Terran Accords establish a new foundation built on voluntary cooperation, mutual respect, and shared prosperity. The Accords themselves represented 3 years of careful negotiation between humanity and every major power in the galaxy. Unlike previous galactic governments based on hierarchical control, the new framework was voluntary. Species could join or leave as they chose, with no punishment for independence and no reward for submission beyond the benefits of cooperation itself. The core principles were elegant in their simplicity. Species self-determination within agreed-upon ethical boundaries meant that worlds could govern themselves according to their own values, as long as those values did not include conquest, slavery, or genocide. Collective defense against existential threats established humanity as the galactic immune system, intervening only when species threatened the overall stability of civilized space. Most importantly, the Accords established mandatory peaceful resolution of disputes through mediation and arbitration. The days of settling conflicts through warfare were officially over, replaced by systems that addressed root causes rather than just symptoms. Captain Sarah Chun, now promoted to ambassador, addressed the specific concerns that had brought the galaxy to the brink of chaos. The enforcement mechanism is simple, she explained. Humanity serves as the guarantor of peace, but only when peace is genuinely threatened. We do not intervene in internal affairs, cultural disputes, or political disagreements. We act only when one species attempts to destroy another through force. The demonstration of this principle had already occurred several times during the negotiation period, when the Caltharian Empire attempted to continue their expansion into neutral space. Human ships simply appeared and escorted the invading forces back to their own territory. No shots were fired, no threats were made. The message was clear, aggressive. Expansion was no longer acceptable. When the syndicated mining consortium tried to force labor contracts on unwilling populations, human economic specialists arrived to offer alternative employment arrangements that benefited both workers and employers. The exploitation stopped not through military intervention, but through the simple provision of better options. Admiral Morrison watched the ceremony from the military command center deep within Haven Prime. The transformation of galactic civilization was proceeding exactly as humanity had planned for over 2 centuries, but his attention was focused on reports from beyond the edge of known space, where human exploration fleets were making contact with civilizations the Confederation had never imagined. Admiral, his intelligence chief, announced, Deep Space Command reports successful contact with the Andromedan Colonial Authority. They represent a federation of over 2 million species from the neighboring galaxy. Morrison nodded calmly. The galaxy celebrating the Terran Accords represented only a tiny fraction of human influence. While the Confederation struggled to adapt to humanity's local presence, human exploration vessels were mapping trade routes to distant galaxy clusters and establishing diplomatic relations with civilizations that spanned multiple galactic superclusters. What is their assessment of our expansion capabilities? Morrison asked. They are impressed, the intelligence chief replied carefully. Our technology appears to be approximately 50 years ahead of their most advanced members. They are interested in establishing formal trade and cultural exchange agreements. Back in the Grand Assembly, the signing ceremony continued as species after species formally endorsed the Terran Accords. The Vorthic Empire, now represented by a humbled but grateful Admiral Kictor, signed with a statement thanking humanity for demonstrating the futility of military solutions to political problems. We have learned that true strength lies not in the ability to destroy enemies, but in the ability to transform them into friends, Kictor announced as he added his authorization to the treaty. The Vorthic Empire pledges to support the principles of peaceful coexistence and mutual prosperity. Even more surprising was the presence of Zealoty representatives, descendants of the Commerce Guild that had been dissolved 3 centuries earlier. Their speaker, a tall blue-skinned being with intricate tattoo patterns, addressed the assembly with words that sent ripples of amazement through the chamber. Humanity taught our ancestors that true victory lies not in destroying opposition, but in transforming it into cooperation. The Zealoty Commerce Guild was reborn as the Zealoty Cooperative Network, dedicated to ensuring that trade benefits all participants rather than enriching only the powerful. We have prospered under human guidance for 300 years. And we pledge our continued support for the principles that made this prosperity possible. As the ceremony concluded and delegates began the long process of implementing the new galactic order, Dr. Vasquez found herself in a private meeting with Archon Veltar of the Kethmori. The elderly crystalline being had led the Confederation through its most challenging period, and would now oversee its transformation into something entirely new. I must ask, Veltar said, his light patterns indicating curiosity mixed with concern. What are humanity's true intentions? You have demonstrated power beyond our comprehension, yet you seek cooperation rather than domination. This confuses those who measure strength only in terms of control. Dr. Vasquez considered her response carefully. The question went to the heart of human philosophy and the lessons learned from their own history. We learned something important from our early development as a species, she finally replied. Power without responsibility leads to self-destruction. Strength without purpose leads to meaningless conflict. We spent millennia fighting ourselves over differences that seem trivial now. When we reached the stars, we vowed to build something better. She activated a display showing human space in its true extent, stretching far beyond the local galaxy into regions the Confederation had never imagined existed. We have the power to conquer every civilization in known space, she continued. We could establish a human empire that spans multiple galaxies and rules over trillions of beings. But what would be the point? Conquest creates enemies. Cooperation creates allies. We prefer to build the future rather than dominate it. Veltar's light patterns shifted to indicate understanding mixed with awe. And if species choose not to cooperate, if they prefer independence to participation, then they remain independent, Dr. Vasquez replied simply. The accords are voluntary. We will not force cooperation on those who prefer isolation. But we will prevent any species from forcing their will on others through violence or coercion. As the formal ceremonies ended and the new galactic order began to take shape, Admiral Morrison received a priority communication from Deep Space Command. The message was brief but significant. Human exploration vessels had encountered something at the edge of the observable universe that challenged even their advanced capabilities. "Sir," his communications officer announced, "Admiral Chun reports contact with entities that appear to exist partially outside normal spacetime. They claim to represent a civilization that spans multiple dimensional planes." Morrison smiled as he authorized the deployment of humanity's newest class of exploration vessels. Equipped with technology that had been theoretical only months ago, the galaxy was celebrating peace and cooperation. But the universe was vast beyond imagination, and humanity had always been curious about what lay beyond the next horizon. "Inform Admiral Chun that she is authorized to initiate first contact protocols," he ordered. "And remind her that diplomacy is our preferred method of interaction, regardless of how advanced these entities might be." The age of human isolation was ending. The age of human exploration was just beginning. And somewhere in the vast darkness between galaxies, new challenges awaited a species that had learned to turn every obstacle into an opportunity and every enemy into a friend. The universe had tried to contain humanity for 3 centuries. Now, it would discover what happened when humans decided to contain the universe.